What is up, my dudes? So this video is just going to be a talk that I captured at Cannabis Europa at the end of day one of the Patients Roundtable. It's an hour long, but there is some really good information in there that I think a lot of patients would benefit from hearing. So yeah, strap yourself in, get yourself something in your vape, and let me know in the comments what you think of the footage. Peace out, Cub Scouts.
Out to the end, and it's great to see so many people supporting the patients. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, there's so many panels we turn up to, and the patients are there, and there's a couple of people in the audience. But thank you all so much for actually taking the time. Now, today's session is going to be a round table. I'm going to be having to take my glasses on and off constantly because I can't see either way. So apologies for that one. And we're going to be pretty strict on time on this, so we want everybody's voice to be heard. We've got a number of people from around the world, and we'll pass the mic round to start off with to allow everyone to introduce themselves and how they got into this industry. So, we'll start with yourself. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I do apologise, but I only found out less than 5 minutes ago that I was actually on the panel. I was sitting over there minding my own business. But anyway, sorry, my name is Tom Curran. I'm from Ireland. I got involved in, I suppose, cannabis. I don't call it an industry because to me it's about patients. To me it's a medicine. It's not an industry, so I apologise for correcting you on that. But I got involved because my wife had MS, and I found out through some people in America that they were trialing cannabis, as I say, 30 odd years ago. Mary, my wife, she died 13 years ago. We were also involved very heavily in the Right to Die movement around the world, which I'm still involved in. But anyway, we found that Mary was taking about 50 tablets a day. About close to 50% of those were to combat the side effects of the other 50%. And we went down to practically zero, with a much better quality of life by using cannabis. Now, it was totally illegal, as it still is, unfortunately, in Ireland, but not quite totally illegal. But that's me, when I built up a certain skill, I suppose, in processing, growing at home, processing the cannabis ourselves, trying different strains for different things, and now what I try to do is to pass that knowledge on to other people. That's me.
This is how it often starts, is the carers start, and they're the ones who actually take that initiative to help the person they love the most. So thank you very much for doing that. Much appreciated. And now on to Simon, who represents Switzerland. I'll allow you to introduce yourself and how you got into the industry.
Hello, I'm Simon. We're running a creation organization in Switzerland. We're doing this since 12 years. And I'm into this because I'm coming from hotel management, from a totally different field. When I was finishing my studies, I got a very severe multiple sclerosis. And I go through all the medication on the pharmaceuticals, and I was super addicted from a lot of pharmaceuticals, and cannabis saved my life to have a life again and quality of life. So that's the reason why we're fighting for medical cannabis.
Fantastic, and it's definitely great to get a perspective from the rest of Europe as opposed to just the UK. Now on to Carola, who represents Spain.
Spain. Hello, thank you all for being here today. It's super important that you are guys engaged in what we are doing. My name is Carola Perez. I've been a patient since I'm 11 years old. I have an accident. I broke my coccyx bone. And after 2 overdoses, 13 surgeries on my back, I still have to use opioids sometimes, not every day, and other medicines. But we founded the first patient association in Spain called Smokie. And then we work in an international level with our colleagues in the IEC and Patient Council that we have to finish because of Franjo's health. And now we are organizing this with the patients umbrella, where we are getting all together again, where we are going to work in the UN level, European level, and also helping all the countries. And we are organizing our own events because we think we deserve to have our own events by patients. And with every detail taken care of, we started in Madrid, then we go to Switzerland, then we go to UK, and we're going to continue because we all we only speak our own language. I mean, there is a huge gap between us and the industry, so we are doing our own thing because we deserve it.
We thank you for you bringing the nations together. I think some of your events have always been fantastic, well organised, and patients first, most importantly. So please don't give up and keep doing what you do well. And now over to Sal from the UK. I'll allow you to introduce yourself after seeing your panel this morning, which was fantastic.
Hi there, thank you. I'm Sal from Patients Can UK. I've been in the organisation for a few years. I joined our founder Mohammed Osway because I got a prescription for medical cannabis. Well, this is a wonderful medicine. Let me just go off into the sunset and enjoy my life. But the realities of being a patient are not quite as simple, unfortunately. So after seeing the lack of awareness and the challenges that patients face and then experiencing them myself, I met him in a park and joined his roadshow, and it's led me here around the round table. But just trying to fight those challenges that patients face, raise awareness and normalise cannabis as a medicine.
Thank you for doing that, and listening to your story this morning about the being pulled over and having those issues with the police and everything you're doing there. Please keep that up so we can actually open more minds and actually take this further forwards and help those who are dealing with these kinds of problems. Now on to Joe from Intractable, who will come from the parents' perspective.
Yeah, I'm Joanne Griffiths from Endar Pain and Intractable Epilepsy Charity. And I first got into this because of my son, who's now nearly 17. But this was 2014 when he was a very small child, and we asked for medical cannabis at Great Ormond Street. We were told we couldn't get it because he didn't meet the criteria to the rare epilepsies, and we later got access through Canada to a full extract medical cannabis oil, and his seizures went from 100 plus a day down to literally just 6 at that time. Now they're 98% controlled, have been since we've been on medical cannabis as a full extract.
And this is a story that's quite dear to my heart as well, being part of Medcam Family Foundation, and unfortunately last year we lost Hannah Deakin, who was one of the women who was really responsible for helping change the law in this country. So thank you for what you do, Joe. And now on to our final patient on the panel. If you'd like to introduce yourself and let us know where you come from.
Thank you for having me here. I'm from United Patients Alliance. We are here an organisation in the UK representing patients. Originally I'm from Greece, and back in 2017 I got the 4th prescription in Greece for medical cannabis for my severe depression and anxiety disorder. Medical cannabis has saved my life, has helped me actually be able to live my life. Otherwise I wouldn't be able to get off my bed. So it's something I want to help other people learn about it as well.
Excellent. So getting that perspective from Greece, who are at a very different point in their journey with it, will be excellent. We seem to have got a good panel here of everyone. I'm Dr. Callie Seaman. I think just about everybody knows of myself. I'm not going to go into detail about myself, but let's get into what we really wanted to talk about. And the first of these kind of questions is the situation in each country and how that differs, so we can compare that and maybe learn from the lessons of how we can improve things, how our country can improve, or what we're liking about that. So if you had to describe access to medical cannabis in your country today in one word, what would it be and why?
Shade. Expensive.
We got there, but we are waiting to be reality is going to be soon.
Hindered.
For children, blocked.
Health.
Interesting that these are quite negative words that we're using. We've still not seemed to have got any real positivity occurring there. So how long did it take from when you needed medical cannabis to when you could access it legally? What did you have to sacrifice in that time?
Well, from my point of view, just going back to the first question, and I'm sorry if I was rude in answering it, but that does describe it. It's impossible, or next to impossible, to legally access medical cannabis in Ireland. It has to be done through a consultant. There are only 5 conditions under which it can be given, and the consultants don't know enough about it. Also, the expense involved. So the answer is, it's still not available to patients in Ireland.
That's so sad to hear, particularly when we were only just over the water. You couldn't even swim.
Yeah. Now, there are still, I would say, thousands of people in Ireland using medical cannabis, but it's all provided illegally. And it's provided by groups like ourselves who grow it, process it, and provide it to the people. But unfortunately, we are breaking the law, and so are they.
And risking 14 years incarceration for that.
Yes.
And that is what is wrong. You shouldn't have to live in that fear. And talking about it today is how we're going to move things forwards. Now in Switzerland, how would you, how long did it take when you need medical cannabis? How long did it take to actually access legally?
So our association was founded 12 years ago. And when we first met, we were still self-medicating in the black market and improved our medication in that we talked with each other and did harm reduction. And we started to tell our story in the public and show our growth and go to the police and say, hey, I'm a legal patient, give me a fine. So we managed to get the medical law 2022 together. So now we can go to the pharmacy or a prescription, but it's still quite expensive in Switzerland, so it's accessible for the people who can afford it at the moment. And a big load of patients are still accessing the black market.
A bit like a 2-tiered kind of system, almost like we've got in the UK, where if you've got the money, you can have it.
Exactly. But the cost is twice, and the same flower in UK costs 6 and in Switzerland 14 euros.
Wow.
For the moment.
And what about the costs of consultation? How do they vary as well?
So it's every doctor can prescribe cannabis in Switzerland. It's not restricted to any kind of doctors.
Which sounds better.
It's better, so we always recommend go to your expert that already know you. But some of them are working really hard, so we also have the possibility to go to a telemedicine doctor. And for the moment, they make very good consultations and follow-ups. So at the moment, they're working good, but we have a close eye on the telemedicine issue.
And how about Spain? How are things? How long did it take for you to be able to actually access it legally? Was it an easy process?
12 years. 12 years. 12 years. Spain is where most cannabis is grown. We have the cannabis, we have a big community, we have the cannabis social clubs. And thanks to that, the patients can find a legal way to get some medicine, but it's not with a prescription right now. So we get the law in Spain. It's the 7th producer of flowers in the world, but they don't give the flower to the Spanish patients. It goes to the Italian patients, the UK patients, the German patients. So we are not going to have oils, but the good thing is that it's going to be paid by the government. So it's free for the patients if you go to the public system. If you go to the private, you have to pay yourself. And also we have for chronic pain, epilepsy, cancer, and multiple sclerosis. So it's a big start, but we have a lot of work going on.
How about the UK and your experience with them, and how long it actually took for you to access it legally?
So for me, once I knew it existed as a medicine, it was very straightforward for me personally to get a prescription, and it's all done online through consultations. Sending my details and legal to. I was a legal medical cannabis patient, but I was lucky to find out about it that it existed, I only stumbled upon it by complete chance, and because of that, I'm an outpatient. But I think in the UK, what's unique is that when people have a health problem, the first thing they think of is the NHS. Unless you're kind of, upper middle class, very wealthy, then you might utilise private healthcare more than the majority of people who do go to the NHS. And they're speaking to their GP, and the GP isn't aware, they can't even recommend it as a private treatment, let alone going down the route of NHS treatment. So I think that's kind of the biggest gap. Once, if you can afford it, and if you know about it, it's very easy, but otherwise it's a big problem.
Well, it does seem like the UK have sped things up a lot more, but I think like a different perspective from the parents and the issues that are actually facing there as well, because there's a whole different set of problems that the families actually are facing.
So back in 2018, shortly after the law changed, we got access quite easily. We got it through a proper hospital called the Portland Street Hospital. We then went over to Portcullis House and we asked the MPs go in and tell the doctor that she wasn't doing anything wrong to try and open this up. When that happened, it opened up to a small percentage of those children. There's about 50 prescriptions. And all of the rest of the children, because we don't have the prescribers that you have as adults, we only have 2. It means that the books are closed, they cannot take any more patients on. So all the other parents are now having to use black market oils. We did have a parent that was actually arrested. Social services were involved. There was a lot of issues for that parent, and a lot of worries that they were going to lose even their child just for trying to help them, to be well. And luckily, a private physician stepped in and helped that family. But there's so many out there that don't have that, and they're having to use black market oils. And we don't think that's acceptable. We fought, very, very hard for our children to be able to have access. We were behind, there was children at the forefront of that, and they did get access. And we were all told that there would be a route, and that route was blocked off. In December 2018, I asked Alder Hay Hospital, it's all through my son's notes, for an observational trial on my son. And they refused, or said an intercontractual referral, a few other things, ideas. And I worked with my MP after that to try and get that on the books, and thankfully it was, but it was removed during COVID. There was no consultation. So for years, a good sort of a year and a half, we thought, that's it, we're going to get access to this medicine through an observational trial. That did not happen, and NDLP have been fighting for that ever since, to get that back, because they accepted it. They said that we could have that. And that is for not just for the children, but for adults that basically cannot come off their medicines to enter a randomised controlled trial. It would be unsafe for them to remove their medicine. And so we just feel that they need to do that, and we've got a petition out there, so please support us.
So just moving on to Greece, how long did it take for yourself to access that, your prescription within Greece?
So I got the prescription in 2017, and the medicine was available in 2022, so several years later.
So
even though the prescription was there, and all doctors can prescribe in Greece, there is no limitation in the illnesses that they have to heal. They can prescribe for everything.
So it sounds like you've got more of an open market than, say, Spain, which is quite limited, Ireland being very limited, and it can GPs, it's not specialists that are required like we do in the UK. Sort of just moving on to the cost of the treatment, because this seems to be the thing that comes up time and time again, is the cost. Now, who pays for each of your treatments? Do you get it paid by insurance, the public healthcare system? And just comparing the countries between how that is paid for, if it's the private way, be interesting to see which one's working well. So, how's Ireland? By the sounds of it, things are not great, but
Well, for the few who have got access legally, the cost is phenomenal. It's about $1,000 a month.
right.
Yes. And that's because the suppliers all come from outside the country. They claim that the market is small, so it doesn't pay them to even bother. So they charge a lot, but it's not. Even though it's technically a medicine, if it's prescribed, it's not covered by the repayment scheme. So patients have to pay for it themselves. Now, one of the things that I stress that, I just with the conversation going on, there's something I do want to clear up. That the group that I'm involved in that provide for patients, we are very, very methodical about what we do. And the idea of black market to me is a little bit degrading because, for instance, all of the product that we put out there is tested. We send it to a lab in Spain, Energy Control. They work with us very well. Everything we put out there, we're so careful of. So to me, that's not black market. Black market is for recreational use, and that's it. So please, I just wanted to correct that. But as far as cost is concerned, the cost is so prohibitive that even if patients can get it on prescription, they can't afford it. So even people who could get it on prescription are coming to us. And the cost difference is phenomenal. It's €50 a month or €50 for 3 months supply from us, as opposed to, because we don't make any money on it. So that answers your question.
Yeah, interesting to see, as I say, it's not far away, and things are so different for you guys. But Switzerland, how is the payment for the treatment model there? Is that government supported, private healthcare system?
So normally in Switzerland, when you get a prescription from a doctor, it's covered by your health insurance. But cannabis is like an exception. And we just have a survey from the Federal Bureau of Health, and only about 8% have coverage. And there is no pattern who gets a coverage. It's like case by case, and maybe you are lucky or not. So most of patients have to pay themselves, and the costs can be immense. So for the last decade, 1 gram of THC in an oral solution was over €1,000.
Say that slowly.
So when you compare it to 1 gram of flour, it's also the same amount of THC. It's super hard. So patients struggle a lot. Now it's changing a little bit. So we're getting more pharmacies and more players, and the costs are coming down for flowers and also oral solutions. But it's super expensive. It's for sure over €1,000 a month for the most patients.
And how about Spain? How does that fare? What is their system of payment for a life-saving medicine?
Depending on where you go. If you go to a cannabis club, it's going to be more expensive because of the risk. But for example, in my case, it was something like €350 per month in the, let's say, non-pharmaceutical market. All everything is analyzed, doing properly, but also the person who helped us can go to jail. So this is an issue too. So we are fighting for this. We have working more than 12,000 hours with patients, and we can go to jail any minute. I have to say that the week after the cannabis law came in Spain, they removed all my pension and incapacity rights. So I received this punishment from the Spanish government. That's why I'm in Switzerland now, because I need some help. So yeah, this is the situation.
And how about the UK?
Yeah, so I mean, in the UK, things are getting better in some ways. When I first became a patient, I had to pay quite a bit for consultations. I think it was £250 a year. I think the flour as well was like £12 to £14 a gram. And as someone who became a patient just after coming back from the Netherlands for 3 weeks, and what I was paying for and what I was getting was quite disappointing in comparison. But things are getting a lot better now. There's a number of clinics where they have free consultations, and the products are getting cheaper too. I put in an order today, £45 for 10 grams, so significantly cheaper to what I was paying 3 years ago for a much better medicine too. But despite this, I'm still paying hundreds of pounds every month, which if you're already buying cannabis from other markets, then switching that spend to medical prescription instead might not be so much of a challenge, and I would recommend people to do that if they're in that position, self-medicating, and they can switch. But if you're not already using cannabis and you're looking for a treatment because nothing else is working, to then try and justify spending hundreds of pounds a month where you haven't been spending that, it can be very challenging, especially with the cost of living crisis now, because people just aren't in a private healthcare market over here. They go to their NHS where it's free or as good as free for their prescriptions. So the prices are going down, and if you already use cannabis, it's a good price. But for those who don't use it already and want it to less, it's very expensive.
And we'll move on to Greece now, because we've obviously covered the UK. So how does Greece cover the costing?
Privately. Only privately.
And that's but do you get a reimbursement of that with
No.
your health insurance? So you have to pay out of your own pocket as well.
Exactly.
So the same model
Very
as the
expensive.
UK
A
again.
bit different for the children now.
Would you like to elaborate?
So for the children in the UK, there's some that are given for free on the NHS, the same medicine that I have to pay nearly £2,000 a month for my child. He can't switch to newer brands that have come out that are cheaper, and some of the parents are on cheaper products, and some people have tried to change their children to a cheaper product, but it has not worked for them, and they've ended up having hundreds of seizures and in a desperate situation. So for them it's life and death, and we're in a situation where there's parents selling their homes, there's parents that are fundraising every single month just to try and get the money together to keep their children alive, which we think is wrong.
So let's move on to what actually needs to change then. If you could change one thing about the access system in your country tomorrow, what would it be?
I suppose for me, or for Ireland, that's a difficult question to answer because access is almost non-existent. So anything would improve that. But I suppose from listening to other countries and that sort of thing, education for the medical profession is one of the key problems. Because as I say, even the consultants that are dealing with the patients that could access it, they don't know enough about it, so they're afraid in case they be sued if something goes wrong. So education for the medical profession, starting when they're learning, and then obviously cost, because it's become an industry. It's not. But I suppose pharmaceuticals is much the same. So, but first of all, the education of the medical profession, and then a reasonable cost.
So, can you repeat your question, please? I have super strong fatigue.
If you could make one change, so it could happen tomorrow in your country to make access easier, or your life easier, what would it be?
So the medical law we have in Switzerland is quite good. So I would change reimbursement, and it would change everything for our system.
So you basically want your money back, the reimbursement essentially.
I think patients who don't need it only for wellness, they need it to survive, to treat their severe conditions, severe specificity. They should sure get the reimbursement for the insurance and not struggle months to months, or go to a cheaper apartment even, or anything to get just the medicine. When you need to live, you will do anything to get to this medicine. So reimbursement is really needed, especially we start to talk now in Switzerland about adult use. And it's going to be super hard when we don't manage to get reimbursement before the adult use will get regulated.
I think there is quite a bit of fear around adult use introduction, and in countries such as Canada, they've seen a reduction in the investment in research occurring when adult use comes on board, because the government thinks problem solved, it's all sorted out, so the investment then stops within that area. Sort of moving on to Spain, another part of Europe, what would you change? If there's one thing that you could change in your country tomorrow, what would it be?
The political corruption. I mean, Spain is growing cannabis for all Europe. We have these cannabis social clubs, and we cannot get access to flowers, suppositories, whatever the patient needs. I mean, this is what we ask for. Whatever the patient needs is our human right to have the best treatment for our condition. It can be an ovule, it can be a flower, it can be a pastille, it can be a vape pen, a vaporizer, it can be anything. And we also want the GPs to be here, not just the specialists.
And Sal, from your perspective, what would you change in the UK? I know how many things I would change, but what would you change?
I mean, I've got a very long list, but since we're short on time, I think I will choose the National Health Service. That's the one thing that really needs to change. If you look at kind of NHS trusts and their kind of policies around prescribing unlicensed medicines, in a lot of places there are pathways for prescribing unlicensed medicines and routes to doing this. But as soon as the medicine is cannabis, then it seems to raise all kinds of alarm bells, and the conversation doesn't get anywhere. So I think another issue as well is, NHS say that we need kind of more evidence before we can prescribe it. We need randomised controlled trials, which we know won't work for cannabis-prescribed medicines, unfortunately. But the industry has 100,000 patients who are producing outcomes all the time, positive outcomes of how this medicine is improving their life. And the NHS is talking more and more about incorporating a holistic model of care and a patient-centred approach. So I think this is an important step in that direction to really take that on board and open up those conversations so we can prescribe. And I think if the industry works with patient organisations, like there's 100,000 voices which we can use to implement the NHS and try and get that change.
Brilliant. And how about for the children then?
I think there's just no clinical pathway at all. We repeatedly asked the Department of Health, and they couldn't come up with one. And I do think as well the scheduling as well needs to be altered.
And what schedule would you move that to?
Currently, I just think the way that when in 2018, when they rescheduled, because so dronabinol in its natural form was already, which is THC by the way, was already there in 1995 for AIDS and cancer. And now, once they rescheduled in 2018, they removed what the World Health Organization say is dronabinol. I think that would remove a lot of the stigma if these medicines were prescribed as the INN name, as other medicines are. It might remove some of the stigma, and we might be able to move it forward.
And how about Greece? If you were to change one thing today for access, what would it be?
Public funds. So the one thing I would change also here in the UK is the cost of the medicine. It should go through the public NHS system in all countries, in my opinion.
Fantastic. So we've obviously still got problems with the influence that patients have, and often I hear stories of patients very frustrated with their voice not being heard. And often events like this, they go to, they'll have a panel, nobody turns up. So do you feel that your voice as a patient has actually influenced any political or regulatory decision within your country, and does industry speak louder than you? Starting off with Ireland.
I suppose, yes, certainly. The politicians that make the rules are quite prepared to talk to us. But they claim that they have so many other things to do, but I mean, that person across the Atlantic, it gives a great excuse not to get involved in things like this. because they don't know where we're going, they don't know where that's going and where the country is going, and they're caught about a financial crisis. And also, I think that the stigma that came from that part of the world as well about cannabis in general still holds up throughout the whole of Europe. And that influence, unfortunately, is the thing that the public are very aware of, that they still regard as a dangerous drug that they have to keep their children away from, and that the black market out there that is waiting to grab their children from school, and that stigma still holds. So we need to change that part of it. But as far as the politics are concerned, they're quite prepared to talk to us, but they're not prepared to do anything about it.
Sounds similar to the UK.
Exactly.
Lot of hot air and no actual substance. So Switzerland, interesting to hear how things have progressed, how things have progressed there, and do you feel that the patient's voice has, any kind of weight to it, or do you just feel like, trying to look for a phrase that's not rude?
The patient voices was heard, especially in the media, and through the media we went to the politicians, and we have a quite direct democracy in Switzerland. So they're quite involved in the decisions, and they was listening a lot. But when they created the law, they give this law and the framework to the industry and just left it at there. So we don't feel really heard at the moment with our problems. And in the same time in Switzerland, we have these pilot trials for recreational use. So politicians don't know it exactly, so they mix it always a little bit up.
And how about Spain?
How about Spain? What was the question?
Do you feel as a patient your voice carries influence, or is it industry like it is so many other places that are the ones that really dictate to the way that this is going?
You know what? I'm a little bit tired of the cannabis industry saying, we heard you, but they don't even sit in the table to talk to us. And this is happening not in Ireland, Switzerland, UK, Spain. It's happening everywhere. I think we're in a moment of history that the cannabis industry is making some moves, some against patients. So I think it's the time that's where we're organizing this, making our effort to go together and have an agenda, because regulators don't talk too much to patients suddenly. In my case, I made more 500 interviews in Spain. I have been covered magazines, talking talk shows, and this is a approach of a new approach to the cannabis as medicine. It's okay, but it's also a lot of effort and a lot of sacrifice you do for yourself and your health. So yeah, I think the issue is not just our countries, but we have to think of all the postal codes in the world.
And I know the answer, but I'll allow you to relay the information and how you feel that does your voice cover any kind of influence with policymakers or as a patient society.
So I think it can be very challenging to get your voice heard, but when we look at the policymakers, lawmakers, regulators, they're just people like you and I, and these people could also happen to be medical cannabis patients. So I think it's really important that we try and get ourselves into these rooms where we can try and have influence. There's a couple of examples recently that come to mind. For example, in Wales, there was recently a motion in Flintshire to protect medical cannabis patients, and that was brought forward by a local hard-working patient who wanted to see change. So they contacted their councillor, worked with the Welsh Democrats, and in that council there's only one Liberal Democrat councillor, but despite that they got a unanimous decision to pass this motion, and it was all because of one patient making that start. And after that, they managed to get it as a national policy for the whole of the Welsh Liberal Democrats. So it definitely can happen. And I've done similar things in trade unions too, which again, they have these democratic processes patients can get involved in. So I put forward a motion that the branch needs to protect the rights of medical cannabis patients. And again, it was passed unanimously. So it's now policy. We have a mandate to deliver that within the branch of the union. So it can be very challenging, and it can take a lot of fight. I mean, the Welsh Liberal Democrat motion rejected the first time, rejected the second time, but then the third time it went through unanimously. So just keep at it, and eventually the doors will open and you'll find a way through.
It's great to hear that there is some positivity in there, and it is great that that determination is paying off, which is a great example to everyone in this room, and to not give up, to keep writing, and if you rejected first time, go back in again. Go back in again and don't give up. This is great. Well done for that. And I know you actually spoke at the Green Party lately.
So I spoke at the Liberal Democrat conference on the medical cannabis, and also the Communication Workers Union. They had a disability motion, so I spoke about it.
I'll just take a moment to give a round of applause to that. I think that's a great step forward. So now, over obviously to the children's side of things, do you feel, I mean, it was the children and those cases that helped change the law in this country, and the law was changed for that reason. But we're 8 years on, and still we are not any further forward. So
Yes,
do you feel that
a number of us at the time that were campaigning, we put forward the children at the front, they got access, the others didn't. With that came a number of different issues along the way, so administration in the hospitals, school administration of these medicines. At the very beginning of this, we had private prescription scripts that could only go into the private pharmacies, so we had to then navigate that with NHS England. We've had to navigate Brexit happening and us not being able to present the prescriptions there anymore, and we've had some really good support, but we feel that since things have shifted politically, that the support isn't particularly the same as what it was before, and we're seeing that when there's debates, there just isn't the people there and the politicians to support us, so that needs to change.
So in Greece, do you feel that the patient voice has any influence at all, or is it industry leading this?
The patients are working with the industry in Greece. That's a good thing that has happened. But yes, the patients were heard. The patients, especially Organization for Children in Greece, they were very active. And yes, they managed to change the law. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's great that there is some kind of influence there. So let's move on to some of the other issues that patients actually experience, and travel is a big one. More and more people are wanting to go abroad, or people choose not to actually go on trips due to their medication or lack of being able to access the medication. Have you ever travelled with medical cannabis? What's been your experience with it? And what documentation and, was there anxiety surrounding it? Now, I don't know if this is a question for yourself.
You can just pass that on,
Yep.
because it
We'll move that on
doesn't really apply.
to Simon.
Sorry.
It involves your country, so I will, it's my turn.
I travel a lot in the Schengen area with medical cannabis. It's no problem at the moment, but I'm super angry that I'm not allowed to bring any medicine to here as a medical patient.
So the UK won't allow you to
The
bring it into
UK
the
don't
UK.
allow any import for medical cannabis, and because there's a special rule, it's not a normal medicine, I can bring fentanyl, oxycodone with no problem, but it's impossible to bring legal medical cannabis to here as a patient. But in the rest of the Schengen, it's a great experience. The first time when I traveled with almost 100 grams of flowers, I was super nervous, and I prepared all my documents, and I never got controlled until now.
Didn't you sort of like, please stop me, I've got everything, let me show you, I've got my documentation.
I was so disappointed at one point that I started showing it to them.
Please ask. Rubbing it on you so you smelt a little bit of it.
Sorry, I don't mean to grab the microphone from you, but I thought you'd finished. But the Schengen situation reminded me of how, I suppose, contradictory this situation is in Ireland. That if you're part of the Schengen group, or whatever you like to call it, you can bring it in to Ireland if you're prescribed within another country. But because you can't get it prescribed in Ireland, you can't take, the Irish people can't take it out. So patients can bring it into Ireland without any difficulty at all. But because it's not, well, because it's not accessible in Ireland, they can't take it out.
Maybe that's why one of the reasons we are starting to have a tourism cannabis to get prescription for 3 months. In my case, I always travel with cannabis when I went to Israel, whatever country I go to speak. I always take the risk. I always travel with suppositories, topicals, and oils, maybe flowers or vape. And I always have a lawyer ready when I get into the country. If something happens, they are aware that I'm traveling, that I don't have a prescription. And it's a risk you have to take, especially in the UK. I feel super nervous. It's not something that's happening all these 12 years traveling. But I think it's super unfair that my purse is super full of oxycodone, ribotril, a lot of things, and I'm not considered a dangerous citizen, let's say, and suddenly because I have some suppositories or some oil, I'm a drug dealer, and I don't know, this is super unpleasant for us. It makes my pain much worse. I have more hyperalgesia. Yeah, it's a mess. So we have to work on that for sure.
How about yourself, Sol?
Yes, I've had some very positive experiences travelling as a patient. Quite lucky.
It's great listening to you. The positivity. You seem to have had really
We
good
need some
positive.
It's
and
not all
it's
bad.
excellent.
There are lots of bad, but it's not all bad. So yeah, I've travelled to many countries. In fact, even when I've gone to countries like Spain, for example, there have been people like, oh, you can't have cannabis out in public. I'm like, I've got a prescription and permit, it's fine, don't need to worry, I'm not breaking any law. I'm actually kind of jealous of things. Yes, exactly. But I can go to these countries and I'm fully legal, even though they might not be able to. But then, on the flip side, it's not all smooth sailing. There's countries where you absolutely cannot take it to, for example, some countries in the Middle East. Turkey, we officially say no, although I did take some flour to Turkey and got away with it, it's kind of tail, but not recommended. But there are challenges domestically as well, I think you're going to touch on that. But patients in Northern Ireland, for example, they can't travel across the border to the Republic of Ireland with their medication, which is a huge challenge for these patients, and something I think goes against the spirit of the Good Friday Agreement as well, because it restricts that freedom of movement for these patients. And there are even some areas within Northern Ireland that the only practical way you can access these places is by transiting through the Republic of Ireland, same for many bus routes, etc. So even if a patient was to get the medication delivered to their house, the courier would be breaking the law because it's going through the Republic of Ireland, perhaps unknowingly breaking the law, I'm not going to know what's in the law on their parcel. And then the patient will be stuck, and they might not even be able to go to the hospital. All of these kinds of challenges because each side of the border doesn't recognise each other's prescriptions.
And how about for travelling with children's medication? Does that differ? Or?
Well, I've been to Spain and that's been fine. Not had any issues. I contacted them ahead of time. I got letters in place, contacted the airline, and everyone was very helpful, and I had no problems. But say if there's a supply issue in the UK and I have to go over to Holland to the doctor that we used to have and get a prescription there, when I bring it back to the UK, I'm now committing an international law, drug smuggling.
And how does Greece pose with travel?
Well, in the European Union there isn't much problem, to be honest, in the Schengen area, as it has been said already. But I have taken the risk to travel all over the world with flower. It was a lot of anxiety, but I was never stopped.
And unnecessary anxiety, which makes your condition worse, which can cause flare-ups. And I think this is what a lot of people don't realise, that anxiety can cause more problems with your condition as well
Yes.
as involved.
Exactly.
So we've more mentioned industry, and we'll move on to one of the final kind of questions. How would you describe the relationship between the cannabis industry and patients? Allies, instrumentalised, or something in between? So it's interesting to hear how that is in each country. And we'll go the other way around this time. So in Greece, how do you feel that relationship is?
In Greece, patients collaborate with the industry. The industry is very small, actually. There is only one large company from Israel that is cultivating and selling and producing everything. So the patients are working with that one company. And that one company is open-minded enough to want to work with these patients.
That's good to hear that there is that collaboration there, and that there is, them actually doing that. How about yourself, Joe, with the children being quite different?
Well, for my son's medicine with Bedrocan, we have a very good relationship with them. I was chatting to them earlier, I know them well. Some of the others as well within the UK have approached us, they've been really great, giving information. But some of the clinics, we're finding that we put in questions to them, we're not getting the same responses, or we're not getting responses at all. And there are some pretty hefty issues as well for the children, especially the ones that have just transitioned from one doctor into another. They're paying double the amount for a consultation. I think it's like £300 odd, and then follow-ups are £190 odd. Cure Relief, the doctor there on the follow-ups now is only charging £30. So that's a huge issue for those families, especially when some of them originally didn't have to pay at all with Portland Street.
And how for the adult side of things, Sal? Do you feel that you're an ally, instrumentalised?
I mean, I think there's been kind of pockets of really good support out there from the industry. I mean, we've done lots of amazing roadshow events, for example, because of industry support and things like that. But it's been very challenging to kind of access that support and have conversations around how we can progress things as a whole. I think if we had, more consistent support, there's so much that we could do to benefit the industry as a whole. We could develop accredited trainings that we could then go out to all of the professionals, police, NHS, etc., to actually train them with accredited training, which improves things for patients, but also in itself is an awareness-raising exercise for these people. So I think there is so much potential if the industry and patient organisations work together. We've seen pockets of that, which has been very challenging and inconsistent.
So how does Spain fare up compared to the UK and Greece? Is the collaboration, are you allies, or are you used?
We would love to be super independent, so no companies say what we have to say or not, or they remove the money depending what you say or not. And for the moment, we, with the Spanish Observatory, with everything, we have been funded by Fundación Cana, the foundation. For the moment, when we make an event, we don't have the industry right now. But when we go international, of course, we need some help from the industry to make these events possible, because they are super expensive to do and to produce, and the videos and everything. So sometimes you will use, sometimes you use them. I think we need to seek more. I think we need to be more united also as patients, because there is a lot of fight between patients organizations all over the world. And our idea is to create this common goal in order to get what we want. And we see also the industry spending a lot of money in the UK market or the Swiss market, but not in the Irish market or the Spanish market. Okay, so also the industry can push the better regulators, and they can invest more, but they are not interested because they are into Germany, Poland, this kind of countries where they can do quick money.
Just a quick word about Switzerland. I'm conscious of time because we obviously want to put some questions out to the audience as well.
And there are sure some great companies that support us since a long time. But in general, the dialogue is not very consistent between the industry and the patient. I think a more stronger work together could help so much, also the industry, to bring the right product in the right way to the customer, the patient.
And obviously, from your perspective, it's a completely different perspective.
Well, I suppose when we were trying to get legislation was brought in 2015, called the Medical Cannabis Access Program. But we get reasonable support from the industry to try to lobby with us, only because they will benefit financially from it. And they have, like for instance, when we need to evidence that this works or things like that, the medical profession, as I said earlier, can't provide that. But the cannabis companies, or whatever you'd like to call them, have given us that information and have backed it up by coming. I mean, I've spoken in our parliament dozens of times, and they have backed up, they've come along with us. So they are supportive, but only on the basis, I think, that if it does go ahead, they will make money on it.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a fantastic roundtable. I want to throw some questions out to the audience. So is there anyone who's had experiences they would like to share, particularly with things like travel, countries they've been to, they've experienced problems with, or anything that we've actually discussed today, anybody wants to sort of add to today?
For the industry, then
Hello. Hello, is this on? Yes, it is. Hi. So, I guess my question is a bit more broad. It'd be interesting to understand how in other countries, because I know how the treatment we receive as patients works here in the UK. What does that look like in other countries? Because I guess my biggest question is, do you get a kind of treatment plan to help you navigate medical cannabis?
Open that up to the international people here.
In Switzerland, it's very different from doctor to doctor, but there's no great iteration way or model at the moment. We start to education doctors, but when I speak to my neurologist, I can fill up my prescription myself and he'll give me a sign. So they don't know much about the endocannabinoid system at the moment, or how to give it in a proper way, so it's not existing. It's like this work is done by patient education, mostly from patient to patient. Now we start and doctors working between patients, and they have some success stories that they get really interested in this, and they're really involved, but it's only a few at the moment.
yeah, I totally agree. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, I suppose in the UK, do you want to do it?
I mean, I'd say it varies.
It does vary, yeah, it varies really. I mean, it's different for the children than it is to the adults, I think, so.
Yeah, I mean, some clinics in the UK, it's kind of, it's almost more like you're buying a product, it's just an online menu.
Or do you mean insurance policy?
Yes, that's another way of looking at it, and I think that's a lot of reasons people get it too. But there's other clinics where it's kind of, you know, you have that full clinical oversight, you have, you know, consultations with a doctor where you're discussing not just medical cannabis, but your condition as a whole. So yeah, it really does vary depending on who you go with and how much money you can afford to pay too.
We were once told by a clinic that they were going to try and set something up for the children with cheaper product, but basically they could have what they wanted if they could afford it. So realistically for us, it should be prescribed on what the child needs. It shouldn't be prescribed on what the parent can afford.
It's funny because with HRT, if you have to increase your amount of estrogen, the price of those patches doesn't change. A prime example of that, so a 50 milligram estradiol patch is the same as the 100 and is the same as the 200. So it's interesting that we've got this kind of disparity when we're increasing, that you're having to pay more and there's not a standard amount.
I think you know, there's a lot of products that have come on the market, but at the very beginning of this, the NHS said there was only 3 products. One of those was Epidiolex, and for the adults it was the Sativex. And yes, there's lots of products now on the market, not so many oils for the children, mostly flour. If you have a look on any of the sites that show you about how many products there are, there's absolutely tons for flour, but there isn't really many for the children for oils. So we're not really getting that variety. And when, like I say, when we try to change, we haven't been able to now. So we're sort of stuck paying the price for a product. But it's a good product, so.
Well, it's been a great panel. Do you have anything to add?
Not really.
I got the feeling that. So thank you very much.
Could I just say something on that one?
Of course you can.
Please. Again, I mean, from the Irish point of view, while there are very few prescriptions, I think in total there have been about 25. But in every one of those, it's groups like ourselves that have gone along with the patients to the consultant to educate the consultant on what they should be prescribing and putting, as you say, a plan in place. And they, luckily enough, they've taken our word for it, but the consultant themselves didn't know enough. So the patients brought us along to educate or to tell the consultant what they should be prescribing.
Because there was reading up the script. Every time you spoke to a consultant, it was like a pattern, a familiar pattern that was occurring. That we as patients have more knowledge about the medication we consume than the prescribing doctors who are qualified on paper, but they don't have any background experience with cannabis. Being a patient, consuming it for medicinal purposes, none of that. And it's just, that's just sad. That's just sad. It shouldn't be like that. It should be.
Times are changing. Companies like MCCS are helping to educate more and more doctors. There is more and more training, and it will take time. But it takes all of us in this room to speak to our GPs, all of us to be able to actually take this forward and take it from being such a mysterious kind of product. I'm going to hand over to Carola now. We've ended the round table, and I believe she's got something important to say.
Yeah. From all the
Not a question, just a comment on the UK system. I'm new in the club, only 18 months to 2 years. I work with Cure Relief, and between my psychiatrist, therapist and sleep consultant and GP, I push hard for what I want and what I deserve and what I looked into. And it's been relatively positive because I've always factually brought my mental health conditions and the evidence I brought outside of the UK. And when I came to Cure Relief, I worked with Dr. Richard and Jill Potts, mainly those two. And they're more or less extended part of my care plan between my GP consultant, sleep consultant and psychiatrist, that I've never had a bad experience in terms of getting into the club. I just feel like I've always pushed for what I wanted and deserved. And I've never had a throwback apart from opinions of outside the medical condition. And when they have been inside it, I've just gone to Cure Relief to produce documents for me. And I've had ECGs, scans, a bunch of tests because of my QT valves. I've had an ECG every 3 months. So I've never had negative experience. I've always pushed hard. And the only negative experience is I had to declare it to my former employer, and they had to check it to see if I was still allowed on site with it. And then it got cleared, and then it became an open book. It was my party trick. I talked to everyone about it. So I just as in, say, Sal, you're in the UK like me with it, I haven't had a negative experience, but maybe because I've come to a hybrid evolved product from when you started it. That's what I put out there to everyone here who's UK based.
Can I ask, do you think it would help if, say, trading standards or, sorry, what's that? So, you know, the regulatory bodies that we already have that you can go to if there's an issue with something. Oh gosh.
I've never had an issue with regulator. I was in the talk here about an hour and a half ago, and they were talking about regulation. Yeah. And I picked up the business card of one of the people who supply it. He's interested in some ideas I said, So I think I don't want to use the word influencer, I don't want to use the word advertiser, but government and the people that make the policies, between them two, need to hear from us more. And I'm happy to be a lab rat, to jump up and down. I tell everybody about it. I try and demystify the stigma to it, because I'm autistic, ADHD, I'm an extrovert. So, like, there's no unwritten rule for me. There's no unsocial acceptance. You know, the whole smoking mirrors.
We need people like you, because a lot of us have social issues where we don't speak up. We need the people who do.
I break every unsocial written rule in polite society, not in a rude way, but just as in, there's no question you shouldn't ask, and there's no question you should have spoken about.
Well, this is fantastic, these conversations. Let's carry these on after the round table. We've got areas out there where we can actually medicate as well whilst discussing this.
I'm only into for night time.
So, thank you very much again for everyone taking part in this. And I'll hand over to Carola now.
Yeah, I would say thank you everybody to be here. Thank you Prevision Partner for allowing to have a patient room for the first time, where we can make workshops, where we can make free analysis for the patients. Thank you so much. It's not been easy to coordinate, but we did it. And I want to make a special homage today to Tom, because it's his birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tom. Happy birthday to you.
Is that medicated, that cake? For once, I'm actually speechless. That doesn't happen very often. Thank you, and thank you for thinking of it.
It's for all of us, this cake, to share and to have a good time together now and share this cake and some tea or whatever. So, thank you everybody to make it possible. And we hope to see you.